Fake Boyfriend. Young Love, Book 1. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Paulina Schubert. Chapter 1. I followed him home. Unlike everyone else I knew, he lived in an apartment rather than a house. Fighting the urge to drive past, I pulled into the parking lot right behind him, so that he would see me before I chickened out on following through with my plan. He turned to look at me as I put my car in park and turned off the engine. "Hey," he said as I scrambled out of the car. "You can't park here. You need to move your car." I knew that, of course. I wasn't in a parking spot or even pulled up to the curb. I had just stopped the car and gotten out to catch him before I lost my nerve. There was no way that I would have had the courage to chase him into the building. Out in broad daylight was intimidating enough. There was no warmth in his gaze as I approached him. "I know," I told him. "This will just take a minute." Hi," I said nervously. "I'm Sarah. I go to your school, and I want to hire you." His expression finally altered from cool appraisal of me to surprise. "Hire me? To do what?" My face flamed with so much heat that I knew it had to be bright red. That added to my mortification, and I looked down at my feet as I forced the words out. "To pretend to be my boyfriend. For pretend dates," I clarified. "It would be enough for you to pick me up from my house and drop me off somewhere." "Is this some kind of dare?" he demanded in annoyance. "Because I'm not going to—" "It's not," I cut in, to assure him that it wasn't anything so frivolous. Since he hadn't ridiculed me, I was able to look at him again. "I need some people to think I have a boyfriend, so—" "Find someone else," he interjected tersely. "I'm sure you could convince some nice guy at school to do this for you." "But I need someone scary," I blurted. I backtracked awkwardly as my face flushed again. "I mean someone tough and—" "A bad boy," he stated with a scowl. "Let me guess. You're trying to change your image, get people to notice you. Maybe even get some other guy's attention. Well, you can forget using me for that shit." "No," I denied. "It's nothing like that. It's actually the—" "I don't care what your reasons are," he cut me off angrily. "I'm not doing it." "I'll pay you," I told him in desperation. $1,200. His eyes widened in astonishment before narrowing suspiciously. "How did you come up with that number?" I realized my mistake in giving him such a specific amount. I should have offered him an even 1,000. I couldn't think up a lie to explain it, so I admitted the truth. "I heard you saying you needed that much." My confession pissed him off even more. "So you decided to take advantage of the situation? That sounds about right. Why not use me to get what you want?" He was making me feel like I had done something wrong, when that hadn't been my intention at all. "I just thought that it would solve both our problems." "Your problems," he sneered. "Your cliché teenage rebellion. You want to sex up your image? You're tired of being seen as the girl next door? Is that it?" "No," I began. "I don't care about any of that. I just want—" He cut me off again. "I don't care what you want. If you're stupid enough to pay $1,200 for it, then why shouldn't I take the money? Hand it over." "You haven't done anything yet," I exclaimed in dismay. "You're supposed to get paid after you do the job." He gave me a wintry smile. "You're not actually planning to pay me anything, are you? You were just hoping to trick me into doing this and then renege on the deal." "No, I'm going to give you the money," I insisted. "But I'm not going to give it to you before you do anything. How do I know you won't just take the money?" "How do I know you'll give me the money afterwards?" he retorted. "I will," I said desperately. "I promise." He snorted. "I know how much a girl's promise is worth. Give me the money or no deal." I couldn't just hand over the money. I didn't trust him, and it was insane to pay him so much anyway. This entire idea was crazy. Yet I had no other plan, and I was reluctant to give up on this one after I'd actually worked up the courage to go through with it. "How about half?" I suggested. "Half the money now and the other half at the end." He considered my offer with disdain and mistrust, and I thought he was going to refuse. "Okay, at least I'll have half if you stiff me on the rest of it." "Okay," I agreed. "I'll go to the bank and get it for you. I'll be right back." "Apartment 108, he said as I turned toward my car. I halted and turned back toward him slowly. "Oh, could I get your number and call you when I'm back? Could you come down and meet me out here?" 108, he repeated. "It's on the first floor. I don't need to come down." "Oh," I responded. "So could you come out when I get here?" He regarded me with his cold gaze. His blue eyes had the contrary effect of being both distant and alluring, and they unnerved me even as they captivated me. "Afraid to be alone with me?" he challenged. "How am I going to be your boyfriend, then?" "Pretend boyfriend," I emphasized. He gave me a tight-lipped smile. "You do know this has to look convincing if you expect people to believe I'm your boyfriend, don't you? Acting scared of me won't help." I'm not acting, I thought, but I didn't dare voice. Gage was the most intimidating guy I had ever met. For one thing, he was big, towering over my 5'6" height. He wasn't skinny like most tall guys, though. His solid build included broad shoulders that made him look naturally sturdy and strong. He didn't have the cut muscles of guys who constantly worked out in the gym, but he was very masculine. He also lacked their male swagger, but that actually made him seem more of a man. They were like posturing boys in comparison to his self-assured, coolly assessing demeanor. Nothing about him seemed like an act. He fully owned the toughness he exuded. "Let's get something straight," he snapped at me. "This is a business arrangement only. I'm not taking your V-card." My gaze lifted quickly to see the glowering expression on his face, and I gaped at him in utter shock and mortification. I could feel the heat creeping over my skin. "That's not... No," I insisted in a sputtering denial. "I wasn't..." I shook my head for emphasis. "I can tell when a girl is checking me out," he retorted. It was spoken without any of the smugness in Damon's tone when he accused me of ogling him and wanting him. Gage said it like it pissed him off. I knew what it felt like to be subjected to unwanted sexual attention, so I forgot my embarrassment and my desire to assure him that I wasn't like that. "I'm sorry if it seemed that way. I was just noticing your size." My cheeks flamed at that inadvertent innuendo. "I mean your height, and your strength. Not bodybuilder strength, but like you can take care of yourself." "I can," he replied flatly, "but don't expect me to be getting into any fights over you." "I'm not," I told him. "Damon wouldn't dare try to fight you. At least, I don't think he would," I added uncertainly. Gage's formidable expression hardened even more. "You have a boyfriend? The deal's off, then. You're not using me to make him jealous." He pivoted and stalked off before I could gather my wits, but I scurried after him. "Wait! He's not my boyfriend!" Gage halted abruptly and spun to face me, causing me to have to jump back to avoid running into him. He crossed his arms in front of him in an intimidating stance. "Who is he?" he demanded. "He's Courtney's crush," I replied. Gage's expression changed from outright hostility to annoyance. "Who is Courtney?" he asked in an impatient tone. "My stepsister. She thinks that I'm trying to steal Damon from her," I explained. "That's why I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend." "So, he's more interested in you than her," he deduced. "No," I said. "It's just that I'm new here. That's the only reason he would ever even look at me. Once the novelty wears off, he'll lose interest." He gave me an appraising look, his eyes sweeping slowly over me from head to toe, and moving back up to linger on my face. I flushed under his scrutiny and dropped my gaze, unable to keep eye contact with him for that long. "That's not the only reason," he stated. My gaze flitted back up to his in surprise. "You're cute, shy, sweet," he added, his voice dropping and softening on that one word in a way that caused a fluttering response in my stomach. "Some guys get off on seducing virgins," he finished matter-of-factly. My face flamed. "Why do you keep saying that? You don't know anything about me." "Like it isn't obvious," he scoffed. "Have you ever even been kissed?" So much heat rushed to my face that I felt like it was on fire. I spun away from him in mortification and hurried to my car. "Hey," he called after me. "Don't forget to bring me my money, or the deal's off. Apartment 108, he said, pausing between each number in what sounded like a mocking tone to me. It pissed me off. and the anger diluted some of my embarrassment over being so inexperienced at the age of 18. Gage was right that I was shy, and I avoided drawing attention to myself. I had one friend at my old school, and she was just as introverted and quiet as me. We had talked about guys, but none of them had ever shown any interest in either of us, until I moved here and caught Damon's attention. Unwanted attention. Oh, he was good-looking with his dark eyes and his perfect face and six-pack abs. I had seen those abs on display several times over the summer. At first I had been thrilled to learn that my new family had their own private pool. That was when I was still naive enough to think that I would be accepted by my new stepsister as family. I imagined us being like real sisters and having fun and sharing confidences, at least at home. As soon as I met Courtney and saw how beautiful she was, I knew that she was one of the popular girls at school. She radiated confidence and poise, and all the social attributes I didn't have. I was immediately in awe of her, and I knew that she would never want anything to do with me in public in front of her friends. I had thought that it would be different at home, though, considering that we were now sisters. As soon as we were alone, I rushed to assure her that she didn't have to carry through on the promise she had made to her dad to introduce me to people at school. I'll be fine on my own, and you can just be with your friends like usual, and don't worry about introducing me to them. She gave me a haughty look, dropping the charming persona she had displayed in front of her dad. I can't believe you think I'd actually introduce you to my friends. It's going to be embarrassing enough with people knowing you're living at my house. You've got loser written all over you. At least your mom is decent enough to be seen in public with my dad. How the hell did she have a daughter like you? She had a daughter like me because I looked like my dad. My mom was a former model, and she was still gorgeous. All I had gotten from her was her flawless skin. There was not one blemish anywhere on my face or body. My best friend, Emily, had commented that it would be a crime for me to ever get a tattoo and disrupt the perfection of my skin. The rest of me wasn't so perfect, though. Instead of my mom's felt curves, I had some extra jiggle on my thighs and butt. I didn't have my dad's beer belly, but I also didn't have my mom's flat stomach. While it was true that she kept her figure by working out and dieting constantly, I didn't even bother to try to attain the beauty I knew I would never have. I wasn't born with her long legs, and trying to tone them wouldn't make them look as lean as hers. I begrudged my mom none of her looks, and I loved her dearly. But I had seen the way people looked back and forth between us and found me lacking. So I hadn't gone down the futile path of trying to live up to people's expectations of what such a beautiful woman's daughter should look like. I wore no makeup to try to enhance my looks, and my clothes were comfortable rather than fashionable. Since I didn't have my mom's bikini body, I wore a one-piece swimsuit. Despite my disappointment over my new stepsister's attitude toward me, I was looking forward to enjoying the luxury of having a private pool. Our parents were on their honeymoon, and I hadn't seen Courtney around all morning. Having assumed that she wasn't home, I wasn't expecting to see her when I ventured out to the pool at noon. I especially wasn't expecting to see anyone else there, and I froze on the deck when I heard a male voice call out, "Hello," drawing out the word with suggestive enthusiasm. My head turned. I saw Courtney in the hot tub with a guy. He quickly climbed out, and I gaped at him in shock as he walked toward me. I had never been in the presence of a naked guy before, let alone one who was unselfconsciously sporting an erection. My face burst into flames as I realized what I was staring at. When my gaze shot up to his face, I saw his smug smirk. "Like what you see?" he inquired. His dark eyes dropped to stare at my breasts. "I do," he said. "Why don't you take that off? You're way overdressed." I crossed my arms over my chest as my skin crawled from his lewd gaze. It creeped me out and made me feel like I needed to take a shower to cleanse myself from his dirty stare. "Gross," Courtney said. "Nobody wants to see her fat ass naked." Despite her insult, I was grateful for her presence. Under no circumstances would I want to be alone with this guy. He actually craned his neck to inspect my rear like a piece of meat, as I instinctively shrank away from him while he leaned toward me. "Not fat," he declared. "So many luscious curves to grab onto while I'm pounding into her." He pulled back to make eye contact with me. Take it off. I want to fuck you right now. My mouth dropped open at his crude demand, and I backed away from him like he was an axe murderer. Courtney made some kind of protest and appeared beside him, but I no longer felt like she could protect me from him. I registered the fact that she was naked too, but his eyes remained on me even as she leaned against him and boldly took hold of his penis. I spun around and yanked open the patio door, leaving it open behind me in my hurry to escape. My heart was still pounding in fear when I ran into my room and locked the door. I stayed in there for hours, until my full bladder forced me to leave safety for the short sprint across the hall to the bathroom. I took my phone with me in case I needed to call the police. I had debated whether to call my mom, but I worried about alarming her for no reason. The guy hadn't done anything except say inappropriate things. He hadn't touched me, and he hadn't followed me up to my room. He probably had sex with Courtney after I left, and I certainly didn't want to get her in trouble and have her dislike me even more. It turned out that she now absolutely hated me. She blamed me for a disgusting and pathetic attempt to seduce Damon, which I gathered was his name. When I protested that I had no interest in her boyfriend, she called me a liar. She also told me not to call him her boyfriend. He was her friend, and I better not try to scare him away from her by making him think that she had the wrong idea about their relationship. I soon found out that it was a friends with benefits situation, and they took full advantage of the no parents home opportunity to indulge in having sex all over the house. I walked in on them in the kitchen one morning and lost my appetite. Courtney's mouth was occupied with a shocking task, which was why I hadn't heard them. Otherwise, she seemed to be exceedingly loud during sex. Damon, on the other hand, had been quiet until he saw me. Then he began to moan and narrate in the form of filthy encouragement what Courtney was doing to him. Yeah, suck. I whirled and fled the kitchen, locking myself in my room yet again. Due to eating very few meals that week, I lost 3 pounds. While this normally would have been something to celebrate, I was too stressed to be glad about it. Getting Damon to leave me alone was a much bigger priority for me than looking good. The old saying of being careful what you wish for was turning out to be very true in this case. In the past, I could only dream of having a good-looking guy like Damon notice me. Now I desperately wanted him to ignore me. I was no longer envious of beautiful girls like Courtney for getting all the attention from guys like him. She could have him, and I would gladly go back to being a wallflower. Damon, however, refused to let me. I made the mistake of assuming that I would be lost in the crowd when Courtney had the typical "my parents are out of town" party that I'd only seen in movies. Having only been to Emily's tame birthday parties, I was excited to experience a cooler one that I would have never been invited to. I wish that Emily could have been here with me, but she was several states away from me now since I had moved here. She'd insisted that I go out there and report everything back to her. I was going stir-crazy in my room. I was also curious to see the kids I would be going to school with. Most importantly, I could finally roam around the house freely, without having to worry about running into naked people. I had seen more nudity this week than I had ever wanted to see in my entire life, and I now knew that I preferred to see people with their clothes on. Emily had shrieked and giggled about me seeing Damon's thing, but it was hard for her to understand how uncomfortable it had made me beyond just mere embarrassment. It had been sleazy rather than titillating, and his behavior had creeped me out. I found him scary instead of sexy. When I saw him in the midst of the party with Courtney by his side, I was momentarily struck by how gorgeous the two of them were together. He was the epitome of tall, dark, and handsome. She was a stunning brunette beauty, and I felt completely washed out in comparison with my dishwater blonde hair and pale features. I couldn't understand why he would ever look at me when he had her. Lots of other guys were casting appreciative looks in her direction, but she seemed to be interested in no one except Damon. I steered clear of them and found a spot where I could people watch unobserved. The pounding beat of the music made me want to dance, but I didn't have the confidence to dance in front of other people. Nobody was dancing anyway. They were all just standing around talking and drinking. Still, the energy in the room was fun and carefree, and I started to enjoy myself for the first time since we moved here. This was my comfort zone, watching the interactions of those around me while remaining unseen. They were like characters in a TV show to me, and I would talk about them with Emily like we were discussing a soap opera. Being at one of their parties had the potential for more exciting interactions than I had ever seen before. I could witness things firsthand instead of hearing the gossip later at school. It was like having an exclusive behind-the-scenes pass. I wasn't supposed to become part of the show, though. "Hey, Sally, I brought you a drink." I looked at Damon, and my mouth worked before my brain did. "My name is Sarah." I instantly regretted correcting him. He was the last person I wanted to know my name, and the last person I wanted to talk to. He smiled, but it did nothing to make me less wary of him. "Sorry about that. Courtney told me your name is Sally. I'm Damon, in case she didn't tell you. Here." He tried to hand me the cup he was holding. I made no move to take it from him. "No thanks." "Lighten up," he cajoled. "Have a drink, and have some fun." I was having fun, I told him, unable to speak aloud the remainder of that sentence. "Until you bothered me." He seemed to understand my implication. "Don't be like that. I'm being nice to you, and you should be nice to me. I can help you. Get you off on the right foot with people at school." He leaned in closer to me. "I'll be honest, Courtney doesn't like you, so you need me to get you in with the people that matter." I took a step back from him, but there wasn't far to go since I was already standing so close to the wall. "I'm good," I replied. "I wasn't popular at my old school either." "But you can be," he said. "I can make it happen. You'll sit at our table, be invited to all the best parties. You won't have to be standing anywhere by yourself again." "I'm fine by myself. I like being by myself," I emphasized, hoping that he'd get the hint. The look in his eyes hardened. "You don't get it. Courtney isn't going to let you off that easy. She'll make your life hell. You're going to have a real miserable year here unless you have my protection." He stepped intimidatingly close. "So you better be nice to me." "Get away from me," I demanded. "I know you want me," he said. "I saw you looking at my dick. You couldn't take your eyes off it." I blushed in embarrassment, but my retort was firm. "I don't want you. I was just staring because I hadn't ever seen a naked guy before. I was just in shock." My response seemed to inflame him, and his dark eyes smoldered at me. "That is so fucking hot. I'll be your first." He moved closer and pressed his body against mine. I instinctively pushed him away, and the drink in his hand sloshed out of the cup and onto my shirt as he jerked back. His eyes went straight to my soaked breast. "Wet t-shirt is a good look for you," he remarked. "Hell yeah," another guy agreed and dumped his drink over my chest. I gasped, but another guy drenched my t-shirt with his drink before I could recover. "Look at those tits," he declared, among whoops all around us. "Take it off, baby," someone called out. "Show us your big tits." I crossed my arms protectively over my breasts as I barreled my way through the crowd in utter mortification. People were laughing at me and calling me all kinds of rude comments. The ones upstairs in the hallway just stared at me as I ran past them. I found a couple making out on my bed, but I was too distraught about what had happened downstairs to be upset about it. At least they still had most of their clothes on and hadn't gotten past taking their shirts off. They also had enough sense to scramble off my bed and quickly put their shirts back on before exiting the room with their gazes averted from mine. I was grateful because I couldn't stand another person looking at me. The tears that were prickling my eyes began to fall as I locked the door. I took a clean t-shirt out of my dresser before removing the soaked shirt and bra I had on. There was still moisture on my skin from the beer that had been spilled on me, but I was desperate to cover myself up immediately. I felt completely humiliated, and I couldn't imagine how I would ever face any of those people at school. Nobody had singled me out in so long that I felt secure in blending in with the crowd. The baggy t-shirts that I wore were a remnant of my self-consciousness about my breasts, which had begun to develop before the other girls in my class. This was much worse, though, than when Nate Robinson had pointed at my chest in 5th grade and yelled, "Boobs!" These people didn't know me, and their first impression of me was seeing me with my wet t-shirt clinging to my chest. That was the only thing they would think about when they saw me at school, and that was the gossip people who hadn't been at the party would hear about me. It turned out to be so much worse than that, because Courtney spread all kinds of lies about me. Damon hadn't been exaggerating about how vicious she would be toward me. I found out about it when one of the guys who had deliberately spilled his drink on me at the party approached me on the first day of school 2 weeks later. "This way, babe," he said as he took hold of my arm and began to pull me along with him. "Where are we going?" I asked in dismay. He couldn't possibly know which class I had because I hadn't spoken to anyone about it. In fact, I hadn't ever spoken to him before at all, and I didn't even know his name. "Bathroom," he answered. "There's one nobody hardly uses." "Thanks, but I don't have to go," I told him and slowed down my steps. "I actually need to find—" He cut me off with a hard tug. "I've got what you need." His tone left no doubt to what he meant, and I dug my feet into the floor and yanked my arm from his grasp. "Leave me alone!" He turned to face me with a smirk. "Don't bother playing hard to get. Courtney told us all about you, and how many times she saw you giving Damon blowjobs. He wouldn't admit to it, of course, because Damon doesn't brag like that. He did tell us that he asked you to be his girlfriend, but that you told him you don't want to be exclusive with anyone." My mouth had dropped open when I heard the lie Courtney had spewed about me, and I stood there gaping at him after he told me Damon's much tamer lie. The guy stepped closer to me. "I can read between the lines. You don't want just one guy, and you love to suck cock. I've got just what you want, babe." I was too horrified to be embarrassed this time, and I stared at him. "Hey, Sarah," Damon said as he walked up beside the guy. "Do you need help finding your classes?" My shell-shocked gaze shifted to him. "Hey," he said in a soothing tone. "What's wrong?" "She hasn't gotten her daily dose of cock," the guy remarked with a laugh. "Don't be a dick," Damon admonished him. But there was a smug look in his eyes as he gazed at me that belied his seeming kindness toward me. "Sarah's not that kind of girl." The guy snorted. "Yeah, right. With those tits and that mouth, she's—" "Shut up, Kyle," Damon interrupted him. "She's Courtney's stepsister, so watch what you say." "Courtney doesn't give a shit about her," Kyle retorted. "You know how uptight she is." He shook his head. "She's so hot. Too bad she's not the easy one." "Hey, Kyle," a pretty girl called out to him, and he walked away to talk to her. "So," Damon let the word hang between us as he fixed me with a hard stare. "Are you ready to play nice now?"